Hey guys, settle here. Tonight we began why medieval sleep was a complete disaster and more or rather, the complete and absolute lack of it in medieval Europe. So before you get comfortable, take a moment, like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And let me know in the comments where you're tuning in from and what time it is for you. It's always fascinating to see who's listening while the rest of the world slowly powers down. Now dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft, meaningless background hum. And let's gently lie down inside a world where nobody slept properly, nobody understood why, and everyone just accepted it as God's will. Medieval people did not sleep the way we sleep. Not because they were tougher. Not because they were wiser. But because everything about their world was actively hostile to rest. Let's begin with the most important detail. The night itself. When the sun went down in medieval Europe, the world did not become calm and quiet. It became dark, cold, damp, loud, and deeply suspicious. There were no streetlights. No soft lamps. No comforting glow from a phone screen reminding you that civilization still exists. Darkness was total. Thick. Absolute. The kind of darkness that makes you question whether your own hands are still attached to your body. Most people slept in wooden houses with gaps in the walls, straw floors, and roofs that politely suggested protection from the weather rather than guaranteeing it. Wind moved freely through homes. So did insects. So did rodents. And occasionally, other people. Beds, if you can call them that, were wooden frames filled with straw, hay, or dried leaves. Which sounds rustic and cozy until you remember that straw is also where animals relieve themselves, insects live entire lives, and mold establishes permanent residency. Mattresses were lumpy. Pillows were sacks. Blankets were heavy, itchy, and smelled like a long story you didn't want to hear. And sleep positions were flexible. People slept on their backs, sides, half-sitting, fully clothed, sometimes with boots still on. Not for comfort, but for readiness. You slept like someone who expected to be interrupted by danger, fire, or theology. Now let's talk about noise. Because medieval nights were not quiet. Animals lived inside houses. Chickens. Goats. Occasionally a cow. They moved. They breathed. They made noises that modern white noise apps have wisely decided never to recreate. Outside, dogs barked. Drunk people argued. Guards shouted the time. Church bells rang for reasons that were never fully explained. Somebody somewhere was always coughing like it was their full-time job. And then there was the spiritual noise, because medieval people did not go to bed alone. They brought God, demons, angels, ghosts, and their own crushing anxiety with them. Nighttime was considered spiritually dangerous. Demons were more active. Witches were allegedly commuting. The dead were emotionally unresolved. And your soul was at its most vulnerable when horizontal. People prayed before sleeping not out of comfort, but fear. Entire prayers existed specifically to prevent demons from sitting on your chest while you slept, which is fascinating because sleep paralysis is absolutely real, and medieval people just decided it was supernatural assault. If you woke up unable to move, short of breath, terrified, they didn't say, "Oh, that's just your nervous system." They said, "Yes, something sat on you." And honestly, that probably didn't help you fall back asleep. Now let's address the schedule. Because medieval sleep wasn't one long stretch. It was broken. Fragmented. Interrupted by religion. Most people practiced what historians now call segmented sleep. They went to bed shortly after sunset, slept for a few hours, woke up around midnight, stayed awake for 1 to 3 hours, and then went back to sleep until dawn. During this middle-of-the-night wake period, people prayed. They talked. They thought about their sins. They did chores. Some visited neighbors, which is an absolutely unhinged concept by modern standards. Imagine someone knocking on your door at 1:30 a.m. just to chat about wheat prices and existential dread. That was normal. This wasn't optional. Church schedules encouraged it. Monastic bells rang at night for prayers called matins. Which means monks were legally required to wake up, stand in cold stone rooms, and chant while exhausted. And monks were the sleep experts of the medieval world. Which tells you everything you need to know. Monks slept in communal dormitories, fully clothed, on hard beds, often without pillows, under strict rules that discouraged comfort. Sleep was not meant to be enjoyable. It was meant to be tolerated. Oversleeping was considered a moral failure, sleeping too comfortably was suspicious. Dreaming too vividly was potentially sinful. Dreams mattered a lot in medieval culture. They were messages, warnings, temptations, or proof that something had gone very wrong. If you dreamed of angels, you were blessed. If you dreamed of fire, doom. If you dreamed of sex, congratulations, you needed confession immediately. So imagine lying in bed knowing that your own unconscious mind might betray you spiritually before breakfast. Now let's talk about sleep in class. Peasants slept when they could. After working until exhaustion. Their bodies collapsed into bed whether they liked it or not. Nobles had better beds, but worse sleep. Because wealth brought anxiety. Political enemies. Assassination attempts and beds large enough to host entire families, servants included. Yes, medieval nobles often slept with other people in the room. Servants. Guards. Relatives. Sometimes strangers. Privacy was not a thing. If you woke up at night, someone else was also awake, breathing nearby, rearranging themselves, whispering prayers, or scratching something ominously. Kings slept with swords nearby. Queens slept surrounded by attendants. Everyone slept expecting interruption. Fire was another concern. Candles burned constantly. Hearths stayed warm overnight. Entire cities were made of wood. You didn't sleep deeply when your house might decide to become a torch. Now let's talk about medieval sleep medicine. Because it existed. And it was a problem. If you couldn't sleep, doctors prescribed herbs. Poppy. Henbane. Valerian. Mandrake. All things that either sedated you, hallucinated you, or quietly poisoned you. Doctors believed insomnia came from imbalanced humors, too much black bile. Too much blood. Too much thinking. The solution was often bleeding. Yes. If you couldn't sleep, they removed blood. Because obviously. Warm baths were recommended. Wine was encouraged. Heavy meals before bed were normal, because digestion was thought to pull excess energy downward. Which explains why medieval people often slept badly and woke up feeling haunted. Children slept with adults. Babies slept wherever. Elderly people slept lightly, waking often, which was interpreted as wisdom rather than joint pain. And through it all, everyone accepted exhaustion as normal. Being tired wasn't a problem. It was life. People napped during the day. Short rests. Moments of collapse. Falling asleep in church was common enough that priests complained about it constantly, and yet, nobody thought to change the system. They blamed the soul. The body. God. The stars. Sleep was something you survived, not optimized. And now, as you lie here, listening to a world that barely slept at all, surrounded by straw mattresses, church bells, incense smoke, and the constant fear of demons sitting politely on your chest. You can feel grateful. Grateful for darkness that is quiet. Beds that don't move. And dreams that are just dreams. And as medieval people slowly drifted into their first sleep, knowing they'd wake again before midnight whether they wanted to or not. Because medieval nights never really ended. They just slowly blurred into mornings without anyone fully noticing the transition. After that first stretch of sleep, the one they called the first sleep, people stirred. Eyes opened in the dark. Bodies shifted on straw and wood. Someone coughed. Someone else muttered a prayer they'd said so many times it no longer had words, just muscle memory. This waking period wasn't panic. It wasn't insomnia. It was expected. Medieval people believed this middle-of-the-night wakefulness was the most honest hour of the day. The mind was calm. The world was quiet. God was supposedly listening more carefully. So people used it. They prayed, slowly and repetitively, sometimes falling asleep mid-prayer and waking again, unsure whether they'd finished confessing or just drifted off into accidental forgiveness. They talked, husbands and wives spoke quietly about chores, debts, family matters, and occasionally the end of the world, which was always considered a reasonable topic. Some people read, if they were lucky enough to own a book, which meant squinting by candlelight and accepting the constant risk of setting something on fire, including the book, the bed, or themselves. Others simply lay there, thinking. Which medieval thinkers warned against. Too much thinking at night was dangerous. Thoughts wandered. Temptations appeared. Doubts crept in. This was when demons supposedly whispered ideas into your head. Not dramatic possession. Just small thoughts, lazy thoughts. Unhelpful thoughts. Which, again, sounds exactly like normal human anxiety, but medieval people gave it horns and a backstory. Eventually, fatigue returned. The body reclaimed control. And people drifted into their second sleep. This second sleep was lighter. More dream-filled. More fragile. And this is where medieval sleep truly fell apart. Dreams mattered too much. Dreams weren't just mental leftovers. They were messages. Signals. Warnings sent by God, angels, demons, or possibly an undercooked dinner. Entire medieval manuals existed explaining what different dreams meant. Dreaming of water meant change. Dreaming of falling meant loss. Dreaming of teeth falling out meant death. Which is comforting information to receive at 3 a.m. People woke from dreams shaken, convinced something bad was coming, and then tried to fall back asleep while processing impending doom. Nightmares were common. Not because medieval life was especially imaginative, but because it was exhausting, stressful, religiously intense, and chemically influenced by strange herbs and heavy food. Sleep paralysis was interpreted as supernatural attack, night terrors were spiritual warfare. Lucid dreams were suspicious. There was no such thing as, just a dream. Which meant sleep itself was never neutral. It was risky. Now imagine being sick. Illness made sleep even worse. Medieval sickrooms were loud, crowded, and full of smells no one deserves. Doctors visited at all hours. Monks prayed over you. Family members hovered. Animals still existed. And the treatments. Oh, the treatments. If you were restless, they gave you poppy syrup. If that didn't work, henbane. If that didn't work, stronger prayers. If that didn't work, bleeding. Sometimes all at once. People drifted in and out of consciousness unsure whether they were sleeping, dying, or being spiritually upgraded, which brings us to hospitals. Medieval hospitals were not quiet healing spaces. They were large communal halls filled with beds, moaning, praying, coughing, and bells. Sleeping there was almost impossible. But that was fine, healing wasn't about rest. It was about God noticing you. Sleep deprivation was not treated as a problem. It was treated as endurance. Now let's talk about light. Or rather, the lack of it. Candles were expensive. Oil lamps were limited. Fire was dangerous. Most homes went dark quickly after sunset. Which meant people went to bed early whether they wanted to or not. Not because they were tired. But because there was nothing else to do that didn't involve injury. But early bedtimes didn't mean more sleep. They meant longer nights spent awake in darkness. Staring. Thinking. listening to the house settle. Hearing animals move. Wondering if that sound was a rat, a thief, or a theological test. And then dawn came early. Church bells rang. Animals woke, work began. There was no sleeping in. Oversleeping was shameful. Lazy. Sinful. People were tired from childhood to death and just accepted it. Children learned to function on broken sleep early. They slept where they fit. They woke when needed. They learned prayers before bedtime and fear before comfort. Old people slept lightly, waking often, which was considered a sign they were closer to God, rather than closer to needing a better mattress. Now let's consider weather. Cold nights were brutal. Firewood was precious. Blankets were limited. People slept layered in clothing, sometimes wearing hats indoors to keep heat in. Breath fogged in the air. Frost crept inside walls. Cold disrupted sleep constantly. Summer wasn't better, heat, insects, smells, and long daylight hours meant rest was shallow and uncomfortable. Mosquitoes did not respect feudal hierarchy. Rain leaked. Roofs dripped. Thunder terrified. And through it all, the medieval mind never asked, how do we sleep better? It asked, what does this discomfort mean? Everything had meaning. If you slept badly, it meant something that if you slept too well, it meant something worse. Now let's talk about monks again, because they truly perfected exhaustion. Monastic schedules were designed to interrupt sleep repeatedly. Matins in the deep night. Lauds at dawn. Prayers scattered across the day. Sleep was chopped into fragments like a poorly planned meal. Monks believed tiredness weakened the flesh and strengthened the soul. Which sounds noble until you realize it also weakened concentration, patience, and basic human joy. Some monks fell asleep standing. Others hallucinated from exhaustion and incense. They wrote about visions, voices, revelations. Modern readers sometimes wonder if these were mystical experiences. They might have been. They also might have been sleep deprivation. Now imagine applying this logic to rulers. Kings and queens attended late-night councils. Early morning prayers. Long ceremonies. They slept lightly, surrounded by guards, servants, and political tension. Assassination was a real concern. Poisoning was common, beds were not safe spaces. Some rulers barely slept at all. Chroniclers praised them for it. Indefatigable. Tireless. Always vigilant. No one said, please lie down. And yet, despite all this, medieval people adapted. Their bodies adjusted. Their expectations shifted. Sleep was not sacred. Waking life was. And here you are, listening comfortably, drifting, with nothing to defend, no demons officially assigned to your chest, no bells scheduled to wake you at midnight. Which would seem miraculous to them. They would envy this silence. This uninterrupted stretch. This idea that sleep is something to protect. So as medieval Europe rolled through the night half awake, half dreaming, wrapped in straw and theology. And drifting was something medieval people rarely did without interruption. Because even when sleep finally arrived, it was never allowed to stay very long. Somewhere in the dark, a bell would ring, not loudly. Not urgently. Just enough to remind you that time was passing and you were expected to acknowledge it. Church bells did not exist to be convenient. They existed to structure reality. They rang for prayers, deaths, warnings, festivals, weather, and sometimes for reasons no one questioned anymore because questioning bells felt unwise. So people learned to sleep through noise without ever truly resting. Now let's talk about the medieval bedroom, which sounds romantic until you remember it was also a storage room, a dining area, and occasionally a workplace. Beds were not private spaces. They were shared. Husbands and wives, children, relatives, servants, sometimes guests, all in one bed or nearby pallets. Personal space did not exist. If you moved, someone else felt it. Turning over was a group activity. Snoring was not a personal flaw. It was a communal experience. And yet, medieval people found comfort in this closeness. Alone at night was dangerous. Together was safer, even if it meant worse sleep. Now imagine nightmares happening in that space. Someone cries out. Someone wakes suddenly, breathing hard. Others stir, half awake, murmuring prayers or reassurances. Nightmares were not embarrassing. They were expected. Dreams of fire, demons, falling, drowning, or judgment were common, especially after heavy meals and religious anxiety. And medieval dinners were heavy. Bread, meat when available, thick stews, ale, wine. Meals designed for labor, not rest. People ate late. Then lay down. Digestion worked overtime. Sleep suffered. Doctors warned against sleeping immediately after eating, then immediately recommended it anyway, followed by herbal sedatives to fix the problem they had just encouraged. Which brings us back to medieval medicine. Sleep problems were treated with astonishing confidence and very little success. Doctors prescribed warm drinks, herbal syrups, scented pillows filled with dried flowers, and baths infused with plants that were either mildly calming or deeply questionable. Mandrake was popular. Valerian. Poppy. Henbane. All plants that affect the nervous system. All administered without standardized doses. Meaning one night you slept deeply, and the next night you had extremely personal conversations with imaginary figures. Doctors believed sleep should be induced gently, unless it wasn't working, in which case they escalated immediately. If a patient slept too deeply, they worried the soul might wander too far. If the patient didn't sleep at all, they worried the humors were angry. Either way, something needed balancing. Now consider the poor. Peasants worked until exhaustion, then slept hard for a few hours, then woke sore, stiff, and tired. Their sleep was less interrupted by religion and more by pain. Muscles ached. Joints burned. Hands cramped. People woke frequently just to shift positions on unforgiving beds. And yet, there was no concept of sleep quality. You slept if you slept. If you didn't, you carried on. Now let's talk about insomnia. Chronic sleeplessness existed, of course, but it wasn't named the way we name it. It was sadness. Melancholy. Spiritual unrest. People who couldn't sleep were encouraged to pray more, work harder, confess sins, or accept that God was teaching them patience. Which is not helpful advice at 3 in the morning. Some people walked at night. Quietly. Carefully. Night walking was suspicious. If someone saw you outside after dark, they assumed something was wrong with you, spiritually or morally. So insomniacs stayed indoors, pacing, sitting, staring into dying fires. Listening to the house breathe. Animals shifting. Wood creaking. The world settling, and always, the thought that something unseen might be watching. Medieval darkness was not empty. It was populated. Now imagine winter. Long nights. Endless darkness. People went to bed early and stayed there for hours, waking repeatedly, trying to stay warm. Bodies curled. Breath slow. Sleep came in fragments. Seasonal sadness was real, though unnamed. Energy dropped. Mood shifted. And still, no one thought sleep itself was the issue. It was life. Now let's consider travelers. Sleeping away from home was even worse. Inns were loud, crowded, and infested. Beds were shared with strangers. Bedding was reused without question. People slept lightly, guarding belongings, listening for movement. Travel fatigue accumulated. Merchants, pilgrims, messengers all functioned on minimal rest. And yet, society kept moving. Now think about childbirth. Women gave birth exhausted, then slept poorly for months or years afterward. Infants woke frequently. Night feeding was constant. Mothers slept in snatches. No one offered solutions. This was simply motherhood. And through all of this, medieval people did not romanticize sleep. They romanticized death. Rest was something you earned at the end of life, not something you optimized during it. Sleep was preparation for waking. Waking was preparation for judgment. So now, as your breathing slows, and your body settles into a kind of comfort medieval people would have found astonishing. You can let go. They couldn't. They lay awake listening for bells, prayers, animals, danger, and meaning. Solitude was rare. Nighttime was when solitude might happen. Which made it unsettling. Alone meant unprotected. So people slept near others. Which meant noise. Which meant less sleep. But more safety. Everything was a trade. Now imagine the rare moment when someone slept deeply, undisturbed. They might wake disoriented. Unsure how much time had passed. They might worry they had missed prayers. Or duties. Deep sleep could cause anxiety. Which is deeply ironic. Now let's slow this down further. You are lying still. Listening. Not waiting for anything. No bells. No watchman.no prayers required. Just quiet. Medieval people would not recognize this silence. They would fill it. With thought. With prayer. With fear. You don't have to. So as this imagined medieval night stretches on, growing quieter, softer, less demanding, because even drifting had rules back then, and now it doesn't. Let's stay in the quiet a little longer. Imagine the night growing older. Not darker, older. Medieval nights had weight. They felt long, layered, stretched. There was no glowing clock to glance at. No sense of minutes slipping away. Time was guessed by sound. A distant dog. A shift in the wind. A bell far away, maybe marking an hour, maybe not. If you woke, you didn't ask why. Waking was expected. So people didn't panic about it. They simply existed in the dark. Sometimes they prayed again. Sometimes they thought about tomorrow's work, sometimes they lay still and listened to their own breathing. This half-awake state happened so often that it felt normal. Which is why medieval people described sleep as something you entered and left repeatedly, not a single event. Now think about how the body learns this rhythm. Sleeping lightly. Waking briefly. Resting without fully sleeping. The body adapts. This is why medieval laborers could function on what modern people would call terrible sleep. Their expectations were different, they weren't chasing perfection. They were chasing survival. Now let's move gently into the middle of the night. The hour when stories say strange things happen. For medieval people, this was when the world felt thinnest. Not in a dramatic way. In a cautious way. This was when you didn't wander. When you stayed close to warmth. When you didn't call out unless necessary. Not because something would happen, but because it might. Fear was quiet, not loud. It didn't scream. It whispered. So people learned to stay still. And stillness, over time, becomes restful. Now imagine someone turning over on a straw mattress. The straw shifts. A soft crackle. That sound alone tells you you're not alone. Which is comforting. So you relax. Now think about winter nights. Long cold. Unforgiving. People slept closer together. Sometimes fully dressed. Sometimes with hats on. Sleep was about heat retention. Dreams mattered less than warmth. In winter, people slept longer, not because they were rested, but because there was less reason to be awake. Darkness ruled the schedule. Now think about summer nights. Short. Hot. Restless. Windows open. Insects. Sweat. Sleep came in fragments. Early rising was common. Sleep adjusted to the season. There was no single, correct, way to sleep. There was only adaptation. Now let's slow the pace even more. Imagine lying there, eyes closed, not trying to sleep. Just resting. Medieval people did this without frustration. They didn't label it failure. Rest was still useful. Even closing your eyes helped. Which is something modern minds forget. Now consider how rarely medieval people chased comfort for its own sake. Comfort was accidental. If you had it, you accepted it. If you didn't, you endured. This made people resilient in ways we've lost, and vulnerable in ways we've gained. Neither is better. Just different. Now imagine dawn approaching again. Not yet. Just hinted. A soft shift in the air. Sleep loosens its grip, you don't fight it. Because the night isn't finished yet. Even after hours of darkness, medieval nights had a way of stretching further, longer than our modern clocks can measure, deeper than our modern beds can contain. Let's slow down and drift with them. Imagine again the house at midnight. Fire low. Animals settled. People lying on straw, feathers, or hard boards. Bodies half curled, half sprawled. Some awake. Some dreaming. Some listening for what might come. Breath slow. Thought slower. Even the noises of the night feel different here. A creaking door isn't just a door. It is a signal. A possibility. A story in sound. A mouse scratches. You wake. You lie still. You assess. Nothing. You close your eyes again. This was normal. Repetitive. Expected. Now imagine the sense. Smoke from the hearth drifting low. Herbs from the evening meal. Animal musk from those who sleep in the same room. Damp wood. Earthy smells seeping through floorboards. Medieval noses were trained for these scents. They interpreted them subconsciously. Did it mean danger? Did it mean comfort? Did it mean life simply continued? Now the body shifts. A shoulder aches, the mattress is uneven. You adjust. You wake a little. You rest again. This is the rhythm of historical nights. Fragmented. Unpredictable. Yet strangely natural. And in this fragmented sleep, the mind wanders. Dreams flicker like candlelight. Some vivid, some incomprehensible. Some feel like prophecy, some like nonsense. Medieval people didn't try to analyze all of it. They let the dreams float by. They noted the meaningful ones. They endured the rest. Now think about the long stretch of winter nights. Dark from dusk until dawn. Cold that bites through blankets. Bodies pressed close for warmth, the night lasting not hours, but what feels like days. Sleep is partial. Rest is partial. Dreams are partial. And yet, when the first light arrives, life begins again. Work, prayer, meals, errands, conflict, conversation. Fragmented sleep continues to sustain the world. This rhythm, repeated night after night, shaped resilience, patience, and the human mind in ways modern life cannot replicate. Now, slow down even more. Let yourself exist in this space of unhurried awareness. No bells. No duty. No expectation. Just quiet. Fragmented, slow, patient, endlessly stretching quiet. Because the night still has stories to tell, even if the bodies are still. Let's drift deeper into the quiet. Imagine the faintest sounds, a wind brushing against wooden beams, a door shifting on its hinges, a distant dog barking, and how medieval people interpreted each one. Every creak carried meaning. Every whisper of sound demanded attention. Yet, over time, people learned to filter, to ignore, to sleep lightly through it all. Sleep, for them, was not a single event. It was a series of moments stitched together by endurance. A half hour here. A brief nod of unconsciousness there. A deep nap occasionally, if the body allowed. Now imagine the different layers of people in the same house. Servants tending the fire, quietly moving between rooms. Children waking and crying. Animals shifting in corners. Parents listening, adjusting, comforting, then drifting again. Sleep was communal, it was layered. It was negotiation. And dreams weren't private either. They carried messages, omens, or just the remnants of meals and labor. Some dreams were shared with others. Some were interpreted aloud. Sleep was part of communication, not withdrawal. Now think about the seasonal shift. Winter nights dragging endlessly, cold seeping into bones. Bodies pressed together, trying to trap heat. The mind wandering slowly, tracing patterns of the day, the week, the year. Summer nights, short and hot, filled with insects, restless bodies, and intermittent sleep. Even when awake, there was rhythm. A pattern of breathing, shifting, listening, adjusting. Even when the mind wandered, the body followed the night's cadence. Now, let's consider illness and age. Sickness made sleep fragmented, uneasy. Pain forced constant adjustment. Old age brought frequent waking, sometimes confusion. Yet, across all this, life continued. People worked. Prayed. Fought. Built. And survived. Even exhaustion did not halt the world. It shaped it. Now imagine lying in one of these medieval homes, immersed in these rhythms. No modern expectation of uninterrupted sleep. No worry about sleep quality. Only endurance, observation, and adaptation. Your body rests. Your mind drifts. No consequence, and as we linger in this quiet, slow drift through the long night of history, because the night, in medieval times, never truly ended, it just shifted. Now let's imagine the very deepest hours, when the world outside is still, but the mind inside is awake in fragments. In these hours, people lay on straw or feathers, listening. Every creak of wood, every shifting animal, every distant footstep could pull the mind from sleep. Yet, over centuries, humans adapted to this rhythm. They became experts at partial rest. Some lay awake thinking about obligations, debts, crops, livestock, taxes, repairs. Some prayed silently, reciting familiar phrases like a protective shield. Some drifted into dreams without noticing the boundary between dream and reality. And dreams were taken seriously. A vivid nightmare could be a warning. A pleasant vision could inspire action. A dream of a loved one might require a prayer to ensure their safety. Sleep was rarely purely restorative. It was functional, communal. Part spiritual, part practical, part survival. Now picture the middle of winter. Long nights, freezing air, bodies huddled together for warmth. Sleep disrupted by the cold, by coughing, by small animals in the home, yet people adapted. They endured. They became resilient in ways modern people rarely experience. And then the opposite, midsummer nights. Short, restless, hot, insect-laden. Sleep came in fragments. People woke early. Worked in daylight. Rested again later. Now let's imagine the rhythms of the elite. Kings, queens, and nobles often slept lightly, because danger could come at any hour. Doors open for servants. Guards listening outside. Courtiers whispering news or gossip. Even sleep was an opportunity for vigilance. For peasants, sleep was equally fragmented, though for different reasons: discomfort, noise, chores, animals. Children slept wherever they could. Pregnant women woke often. The sick barely slept at all. And yet, all of them survived. Life continued in this fragmented, half-awake rhythm. Cities thrived. Kingdoms persisted. Generations endured. Now think about the final stretch before dawn. The faintest light appears. Birds begin their song. The world stirs. People wake not fully rested, but ready. Life demands action. Sleep may have been brief, broken, uneasy, but it was enough. And in this long drift through medieval nights, one pattern is clear. Sleep was never a luxury. It was a skill. A necessity. A carefully navigated landscape of darkness, sound, scent, body, and mind. Because now we are moving into the most private, most mystical part of the medieval night, the hours when the mind wanders beyond the body, when dreams, rituals, and imagination intertwine. In this stretch, people did not think of sleep as separate from life. It was a bridge between waking and divine, mortal and eternal, body and spirit. Monks and nuns, for example, practiced vigils. They rose in the middle of the night to chant prayers. They walked silently through stone corridors. Every step, every whispered word was part of a rhythm that kept them half awake, half in meditation, half dreaming. Even common folk participated in this bridge. And here, in this long, slow immersion, we can let our modern bodies experience it, not fully, not dangerously, but with awareness of how human endurance shaped life in a world without alarm clocks, soft beds, or sleep studies. As dawn nears, the night gradually surrenders. Light creeps in. Birds stir. People rise. Sleep fragments fade. Life begins again. And yet, the memory of the night remains, like a faint echo. Because now we enter the part of the night that was both feared and revered, the hour of dreams, visions, and nocturnal insight. Medieval people believed that what happened while you slept was not separate from reality. Sleep was a liminal space, between life and death, body and spirit, the natural and the supernatural. In the middle of the night, the mind was thought to be most vulnerable, and most powerful. This was when demons might wander, when angels might visit, when a dream could predict the future. People took precautions. Placing protective charms under pillows. Sprinkling holy water in bedrooms. Reciting prayers aloud or silently. Sleeping with weapons nearby, even in simple homes. Even for the elite, sleep carried risk. Kings and queens often had night guards inside their chambers, not to fight armies but to ward off poison, intruders, and assassination attempts. Their sleep was strategic, an extension of governance. Now consider dreams themselves. A farmer might dream of a flood or a failing harvest. A noble might dream of betrayal or political upheaval. A monarch might see visions of saints, enemies, or omens of war. Dreams were interpreted carefully, often by clergy or learned advisors. They could dictate actions, sending troops, performing penance, or adjusting taxes. Sleeping wasn't just resting, it was planning, predicting, and negotiating with the unseen. And then there were the night terrors, caused by illness, exhaustion, or perhaps the potent herbal concoctions that rulers like Isabella of Castile or Charles the Bad consumed. These experiences, hallucinations, vivid visions, or paralysis, were recorded in chronicles. Sometimes they were warnings. Sometimes they were signs of divine favor. Sometimes they were just the result of too much opium, mandrake, or henbane. Sleep, dreams, and wakefulness were deeply entangled with religion. Monks, nuns, and lay people alike viewed the night as a time for spiritual practice, even if unconscious. Vigil prayers, repeated chants, and ritualized movements became extensions of both faith and survival. And yet, through all of this, medieval people learned a fragile mastery of rest. They adapted to interruptions, discomfort, noise, and fear. They found fragments of sleep in short naps, segmented rest, and communal bedding. Even in extreme conditions, war, plague, famine, humans persisted. They endured nights without modern conveniences, without soft beds, without safety, without assurance of uninterrupted rest. This endurance shaped their culture, their creativity, and their very survival. Sleep became a skill, not a luxury. Now imagine lying there, drifting through this medieval night. The air cools. Sounds echo faintly. Your mind drifts into visions. You rest lightly. You adapt instinctively. And in this long, layered experience of darkness, we begin to see, the night was not empty, it was alive, active, and essential. Because now we are moving into the longest, most intricate hours of the medieval night, where sleep, ritual, and survival intertwined into a single, fragile system. By now, you can picture the household at midnight. Fires reduced to embers. Animals dozing, but occasionally stirring. Children huddled in corners or on benches, adults listening, adjusting, sometimes whispering prayers. The occasional distant sound from a neighbor or the street. Every small noise mattered. Every movement was noted. Sleep was never total. It was segmented, cautious, and functional. Now let's move into the role of herbs and remedies in sleep. Across Europe, people relied on medicinal plants, infusions, and resins to help them survive the night. Mandrake root, notorious for its alleged scream when pulled from the earth, used to induce deep sleep. Opium teas and syrups, potent enough to sedate even the most restless nobles. Henbane and other psychoactive plants to calm the mind or sometimes, unintentionally, induce hallucinations. Herbal pillows, filled with lavender, wormwood, rosemary, or other aromatics to soothe or protect. Even monarchs like Isabella of Castile or Frederick II experimented with these remedies as part of strategic rest, blending wellness, ritual, and politics. Sleep was also highly ritualized. Monks followed the canonical hours, waking multiple times at night for prayer and reflection. Nobles might observe rituals of purification, blessing their chambers, or preparing their bodies for rest. Common folk practiced habitual sequences, securing fires, doors, and animals, arranging straw or mats, reciting prayers to ward off spirits or illness. All of this meant that sleep was rarely simple. It was a negotiation between the body, the mind, and the unseen world. Now let's explore dreams in more detail, because medieval society believed they were messages. Dreams could foreshadow events in daily life. Bad dreams were warnings to avoid danger or perform penance. Good dreams might inspire creativity, political strategies, or spiritual reflection. Even soldiers and travelers would interpret dreams before battle or long journeys. And then there were extreme nights, plagues, wars, or long winters. Families huddled together for warmth. The sick and dying disrupted the household. Sleep became scattered, light, and constantly interrupted, yet survival demanded that people adapt. In these extreme circumstances, sleep became both a challenge and a necessity, and humans learned resilience through fragmented rest. Even at the most uncomfortable moments, life continued, because medieval people could endure nights that modern humans would find almost unbearable. Now imagine lying there with them. Listening to the house, the wind, the animals. Feeling the uneven mattress or straw beneath you. Breathing slowly, adjusting your body instinctively. Drifting lightly, half-conscious, between dreams and wakefulness. You begin to understand how every sensory input mattered, sound, scent, temperature, light, and how medieval humans were experts at navigating this environment. And through all of this, sleep shaped culture, faith, work, and survival. It was never separate from life. Because now we are entering the deep, continuous stretch of medieval nights, the hours when life, duty, and ritual all merge into the subtle art of survival while half asleep. Let's slow down and immerse ourselves further. Imagine a noble household somewhere in Europe. The fire has died down to glowing embers, casting a faint warmth and flickering shadows. Servants move silently between rooms, checking doors, feeding animals, and tending to any sick family members. Children shift in their bedding, occasionally waking to the sound of a creaking floorboard or a distant owl. The lord or lady of the house lies awake periodically, listening, adjusting, praying, or sipping a herbal preparation designed to ease the mind or body. Sleep here is never perfect. It is segmented, vigilant, and often communal. Bodies touch, senses remain alert, and even dreams are part of life's practical concerns. Now consider the ritualized aids to sleep. Herbs and oils, lavender, rosemary, wormwood, mandrake, and henbane were tucked under pillows or brewed into teas to soothe the mind. Incense and resins, especially in noble or monastic settings, aromatic smoke filled rooms to calm, purify, or spiritually elevate the sleeper. Prayer and chanting, whispers of psalms or the recitation of protective prayers were common across social classes. Physical adjustments, blankets, straw, furs, or featherbeds were shifted repeatedly to maximize warmth and comfort. Even monarchs like Philip the Fair or Frederick II treated sleep as a blend of science, spirituality, and strategy, sometimes drinking sedative concoctions, sometimes inhaling psychoactive vapors, all to enhance their ability to govern, dream, or endure the night. Now let's drift into dreams, the currency of the medieval night. Dreams could foreshadow danger, signal divine favor, or inspire political action. A vivid nightmare might prompt a change in strategy, a religious ritual, or an act of penance. Pleasant visions might guide creative work, inspire poetry, or reassure anxious rulers. Chroniclers often recorded unusual dreams of nobility, noting the perceived connection between nocturnal vision and waking decision-making. And yet, sleep remained fragmented and interrupted, particularly in extreme situations. Winter nights, long and frigid, required bodies to cluster together for warmth. Sickness, childbirth, or plague disrupted even the deepest sleepers. Soldiers and travelers often slept lightly, ready for alarms or dangers. Even in peace, night was never completely safe. Predators, thieves, or fire demanded vigilance. Through all of this, medieval people became experts in partial rest, light vigilance, and fragmented sleep cycles. They endured exhaustion without modern comforts, clocks, or mattresses. Their resilience shaped both their personal lives and the societies they governed. Now picture yourself lying there, drifting through this world. Feeling the uneven straw mattress beneath you. Because now we enter the longest stretch of the medieval night, the hours where darkness, dreams, and duty converge into a continuous rhythm that shaped lives, minds, and kingdoms. Imagine a peasant home in winter. Straw mattresses pressed into corners, shared by children, parents, and sometimes livestock. Fires reduced to embers, smoke curling faintly through low rafters. Wind rattling doors and window shutters, every sound magnified in the quiet. The sick or elderly shifting, groaning softly, and the rest of the household listening, adjusting, offering minimal comfort before resuming rest. Sleep is never uninterrupted. It is fragmented, alert, and communal. You wake partially, shift, adjust, close your eyes again, and drift, a cycle repeated countless times. Now imagine the role of herbs and medicines in the household. Lavender, rosemary, and wormwood tucked into pillows to ease the mind. Mandrake or henbane preparations for deep sleep or dream enhancement, usually consumed sparingly due to their potency, mild sedatives brewed into teas, helping the exhausted body surrender to rest. Even ordinary sleep carried ritualized precautions. Protecting against theft, predators, or spiritual danger. Prayer whispered silently to ensure protection, calm the mind, or prevent nightmares. Placing charms or symbols under pillows, woven from belief, superstition, and experience. Now drift into dreams, the heart of the night's magic and meaning. Dreams could guide the next day's work, warn of danger, or inspire creativity. Nobles, monks, and commoners alike interpreted their dreams, sometimes consulting clergy or elders. Hallucinations or nightmares could signal illness, poison, divine messages, or impending danger. Dreams were woven into decision-making, especially for rulers navigating war, politics, or diplomacy. Sleep was not a passive state. It required adaptation, vigilance, and resilience. Medieval humans became experts in fragmented rest, communal sleep, and survival through exhaustion. Now picture noble or royal chambers. Monarchs like Isabella of Castile, Philip the Fair, or Frederick II used sleep strategically. Sedative herbal drinks, psychoactive resins, and incense-filled chambers aided rest, dreams, or insight. Sleep was a form of both personal preservation and political strategy. Dreams and hallucinations were recorded, interpreted, and sometimes acted upon. Even in extreme conditions, war, plague, famine, humans persisted. Sleep adapted to circumstance, environment, and duty. Life continued despite fragmented nights. Now imagine lying there yourself. Hearing the faint creak of floorboards or distant animals. Feeling the uneven bedding beneath you. Breathing in the faint sense of fire, herbs, and earth. Drifting lightly between wakefulness and dreams. You are inhabiting, in a small measure, the rhythm of medieval life at night, alert yet resting, vigilant yet vulnerable, human and resilient. And the night stretches on, quiet but alive, full of ritual, dreams, prayers, and the faint hum of endurance, because now we are moving into the deepest, most intricate layers of the medieval night, where every sense, thought, and ritual intertwines into the rhythm of survival, faith, and endurance. Picture again a royal chamber. A soft fire casts flickering shadows across tapestries and stone walls. A monarch lies on a feather mattress, sometimes propped up, sometimes reclining fully. Incense smoke curls from burners, filling the room with mandrake, blue lotus, or frankincense, subtle sedatives or spiritual enhancers. Herbal teas, opium syrups, or psychoactive powders rest nearby, ready to soothe the body, sharpen the mind, or guide dreams. Sleep here is strategic, not passive. A king or queen may wake repeatedly to check documents or receive a secret message. And yet, there is more to explore. How sleep rituals influenced political decisions. How dreams inspired culture and creativity. How medieval sleep practices prepared people for survival in extreme conditions. Because now we are entering the most expansive, most immersive hours of the medieval night, where time slows, the senses sharpen, and sleep, dreams, and ritual overlap into a continuous experience. Let's drift deeper into the lives of medieval people through the lens of the night. The monarch's chamber. The room is dim, flickering with candlelight and embers. Monarchs such as Isabella of Castile or Frederick II lie on feather-stuffed mattresses, surrounded by herbal remedies, incense burners, and opium or mandrake concoctions. Sleep is never fully surrendered, it is measured, strategic, and sometimes experimental. Dreams are observed as potential messages, guidance, warning, or insight. Guards and advisors remain nearby, alert to any disturbance. These rulers often blended wellness and governance in their sleep. A sedative might calm nerves before a council meeting. Aromatic fumes could clarify the mind, at least according to medieval understanding. Dreams might influence military campaigns, diplomatic negotiations, or religious decisions. The monastic night. Monks rise at midnight, 2 a.m., and 4 a.m. for prayers, vigil, or meditation. Sleep is fragmented, punctuated by ritual. The stone floors, cold walls, and faint candlelight shape the rhythm of rest. Partial sleep is sufficient because discipline and expectation make it restorative. The common household. Straw mattresses and blankets shared by family and animals. Children shift, parents adjust, animals stir. Herbs and charms ward off spirits, nightmares, or illness. Sleep is adaptive, communal, and entwined with survival. Dreams and nightly experiences. Dreams are taken seriously, guiding decisions, actions, or spiritual practice. Hallucinations, night terrors, or visions are recorded and interpreted. Sleep is not an escape, it is active engagement with the world in a different state of consciousness. Extreme circumstances. During war, plague, or famine, sleep is fragmented but still essential. Vigilance is necessary, comfort is rare. Dreams and hallucinations serve as coping mechanisms, sometimes leading to action. Life persists, resilient against interruption. Sensory experience of the night. The uneven bed beneath you. Distant creaks, the wind, or animal movements. Smells of smoke, herbs, and earth. Drifting between wakefulness, dreams, and reflection. This is the medieval rhythm of night, a mix of vigilance, endurance, ritual, and fragmented rest, and yet, there is more to explore. How monarchs used sleep and dreams as tools of governance. How monasteries and religious rituals shaped the fragmented sleep cycle. How dreams, visions, and hallucinations influenced culture, creativity, and survival strategies. Because now we are entering the longest, most intricate layer of medieval nights, the hours when consciousness and unconsciousness merge, and life, ritual, and survival are all happening simultaneously. Let's move deeper into specific examples of how sleep shaped decisions and culture. 1. Monarchs and strategic sleep. Isabella of Castile used herbal sedatives like opium and mandrake not only for rest but to calm nerves before political negotiations. Charles the Bad of Navarre experimented with hallucinogenic potions, which sometimes led to decisions so impulsive that his advisors were forced to interpret dreams as strategic insight. Because now we are entering the longest, most intricate layer of medieval nights, the hours when consciousness and unconsciousness merge, and life, ritual, and survival are all happening simultaneously. Let's move deeper into specific examples of how sleep shaped decisions and culture. 1. Monarchs and strategic sleep. Isabella of Castile used herbal sedatives like opium and mandrake not only for rest but to calm nerves before political negotiations. Charles the Bad of Navarre experimented with hallucinogenic potions, which sometimes led to decisions so impulsive that his advisors were forced to interpret dreams as strategic insight. Philip the Fair of France inhaled dense incense during Mass, entering a quasi-trance that influenced diplomatic and military decisions. In these cases, sleep, dreams, and intoxication were intertwined with governance. Political judgment was filtered through altered consciousness. Monastic vigil and fragmented rest. Monks and nuns followed canonical hours, waking multiple times at night for prayers, chants, or meditation. Their sleep was intentionally fragmented, creating a rhythm that balanced rest with spiritual discipline. These practices trained the mind to adapt to interrupted rest, enhancing mental resilience over long periods of hardship. 3. Peasant life and night adaptation. Families shared small spaces with animals, adjusting constantly to temperature, noise, and movement. Herbs, charms, and prayer were practical tools against illness, predators, and spiritual threats. Sleep was communal and adaptive, not indulgent, requiring constant micro-adjustments throughout the night. 4. Dreams as guidance and strategy. Dreams were treated as functional experiences, influencing decisions from agriculture to diplomacy. Soldiers sometimes interpreted dreams as omens for battle. Nobles might adjust strategy based on visions or hallucinations. Hallucinations caused by herbs or fatigue were integrated into daily interpretation. The line between dream and decision was fluid. 5. Extreme conditions. Plague, famine, and war disrupted sleep entirely. Vigilance, communal warmth, and fragmented rest became life-saving strategies. Dreams and hallucinations became psychological coping mechanisms, sometimes shaping survival strategies. 6. Sensory immersion of night. Sound, creaking floors, wind through shutters, animals stirring. Touch, uneven bedding, straw, or feather mattresses. Smell, smoke, herbs, resin, damp earth. Sight, flickering firelight or candle glow creating shadowed patterns. Sleep was not passive. Every sense contributed to adaptation, vigilance, and survival. 7. Cultural impact of sleep. Monarchs' dreams influenced political decisions and diplomacy. Monastic rituals influenced spiritual culture and daily rhythm. Peasant sleep habits shaped communal living, resilience, and adaptation. Herbs, incense, and sedatives influenced both mental states and cultural practices. Now imagine lying there, drifting in this layered, complex medieval night. Half-conscious, adjusting, listening. Feeling the faint warmth of fire and the cool air from windows. Smelling herbs, smoke, and the earth. Drifting between vigilance, dreams, and ritualized awareness. The fire has almost gone out now. Not extinguished, just low enough that it no longer commands attention. It breathes quietly, like the house itself. This is the hour when sleep deepens for some and thins for others. Some people slip into heavy rest, bodies finally surrendering after a day of labor. Others wake suddenly, unsure why, hearts beating faster for a few moments before calming again. In the medieval world, waking at night did not cause panic. It was expected. It was normal. People did not lie there thinking, "Why am I awake?" They thought, "What should I do while I am?" A quiet prayer. A moment of reflection. A check on the animals. A glance at the door. Then back to rest. In monasteries, this is when voices rise softly in the dark. Chanting echoes along stone corridors. The sound is low, steady, hypnotic. Monks sway slightly as they stand, half awake, half dreaming, words memorized so deeply that the mind can drift while the mouth continues. This kind of wakefulness reshapes the brain. It teaches endurance. It teaches calm inside exhaustion. Far away, in a royal residence, a ruler lies awake, not anxious, just alert. Sleep comes in waves. A dream forms, fades, reforms. Images overlap, a council chamber, a battlefield, a face from childhood, a religious symbol whose meaning feels important but unclear. No one dismisses these visions. They linger in memory. They may be discussed later, cautiously, respectfully. Because in the medieval mind, the night speaks differently than the day. Outside, the world is quieter, but not silent. Wind moves through trees. Water shifts in rivers. Animals reposition themselves. The night breathes that in poorer homes, someone turns over, disturbing straw and cloth. A child murmurs in sleep. A parent adjusts instinctively, without waking fully. This is practiced movement. This is generational knowledge. Sleep here is shared, not isolated. Bodies learn each other's rhythms. Safety comes from proximity. As hours pass, the night enters its deepest phase. This is when dreams grow vivid, not because they are mystical, but because the body is finally still. Thoughts slow. The mind begins weaving images without resistance. Some dreams are strange. Some are comforting. Some are unsettling enough to be remembered for years. People do not analyze dreams immediately. They carry them quietly into the next day. A farmer might hesitate before a decision. A ruler might delay an order. A monk might pray longer than usual. Now the cold becomes noticeable. Even indoors, temperature drops. People pull coverings closer. Animals shift again, seeking warmth. The night reminds everyone of its power. And yet, this is also when the mind is calmest. There is no obligation to act. No audience. No demand. Only breathing. Listening, resting when possible. This is the stretch of night where medieval people unknowingly mastered something modern life struggles with. Being awake without panic. Being tired without fear. Resting without perfection. Slowly, very slowly, the darkness begins to thin. Not light yet. Just a change in texture. A subtle easing of black into deep blue. Birds are not singing yet. But the world is preparing. People begin to stir more frequently. Sleep loosens its hold. Dreams dissolve into fragments. Soon, someone will rise. A fire will be coaxed back to life. Another day will begin, not because anyone is ready, but because life continues. And this is the truth of medieval nights. They were not romantic. They were not restful. Then we stay with the night, letting it unfold without interruption, the way medieval life actually did, slow, quiet, and unhurried. The darkness is no longer absolute now. It hasn't lifted, but it has softened. This is the hour medieval people often called the second sleep's edge, that strange time when rest becomes light again, when the body begins to rise before the mind is fully ready. Some people wake naturally. Others drift in and out, hovering between dreaming and awareness. No alarm pulls them up. The world itself does. In homes across villages, towns, monasteries, and palaces, subtle movements begin. A hand reaches for a cloak. Someone sits up briefly, then lies back down. Another rolls onto their side, feeling the chill and pulling fabric closer. This moment is deeply human. It has existed for thousands of years. In monasteries, this is when final night prayers echo softly. Voices are tired now, lower, slower, the words blur slightly, but the rhythm holds. Stone walls absorb the sound, returning it gently. For nobles, this is often when thoughts return. Decisions left unresolved the night before surface again. A treaty. A marriage alliance. A punishment delayed. A letter not yet sent. Sleep here is no longer deep enough to hide worries, but it is calm enough to hold them without panic. Dreams fade, but feelings remain. A sense of unease. A quiet confidence. An unexplained hesitation. These emotions are trusted. They are not dismissed as meaningless. In common households, someone may rise briefly. To check the fire. To step outside quietly. To relieve themselves. To look at the sky, they return without waking others, practiced and careful. This kind of movement is learned early in life. Children grow up knowing how to walk in darkness without fear. The night air feels different now. Cooler, sharper. Almost expectant. Animals sense it too. Horses shift. Dogs lift their heads. Chickens stir faintly. The world is preparing itself. Sleep now comes in very short waves, minutes at a time. Enough to rest the body, not enough to disappear into dreams. And this is where medieval resilience truly shows. People do not resent this state. They accept it. They understand that rest does not need to be perfect to be sufficient. Slowly, almost imperceptibly, the sky begins to change. Not sunrise yet. Just a thinning of darkness at the edges. This is when the night finally releases its grip. People rise, not refreshed, not exhausted, simply ready. Ready because life demands it. Ready because they have always lived this way. A fire is stirred. A door opens. Footsteps sound softly on packed earth or stone. Another day begins. And the night, with all its fragments, rituals, dreams, and half-sleep, folds itself quietly into memory, ready to return again. This is the rhythm medieval people lived inside. Night after night. Season after season. Generation after generation. Then we let the night stretch a little longer, because in medieval life the boundary between night and morning was never sharp. It blurred, lingered, and eased itself open. The sky is changing now, but slowly. A thin gray seeps into the black, like ink diluted with water. No one calls this morning yet. This is the in-between hour. People move carefully, conserving energy. No sudden motions. No loud voices. The body is awake, but the mind is still wrapped in sleep's afterimage. In villages, the first person to rise is often the same every day. Habit has trained the body better than any clock. They stir the fire gently, coaxing flame from embers. Smoke curls upward, carrying the scent of warmth into the room. Others stir at the smell. In royal households, servants wake before rulers. Footsteps are soft. Curtains are adjusted just enough to admit faint light. Water is prepared. Clothes laid out. No one rushes a monarch awake. Waking is a process, not a moment. In monasteries, the final night chant fades. Silence follows, not empty, but full. A deep, collective pause. This pause matters. It is the space where the night finally releases its stories. Dreams lose their sharpness now. Images dissolve into impressions. But the feeling remains. A sense of warning. A sense of reassurance. A sense of resolve. These feelings will quietly guide the day. Outside, birds begin their first tentative calls. Not the full chorus, just scattered notes, testing the air. Animals respond. The world is waking together. People stretch slowly. Joints complain softly. Fatigue is present, but familiar. No one expects to feel perfect. This is a society built on endurance, not optimization. Breakfast, when it comes, is simple. Bread. Leftovers. Something warm, if possible. Eating is functional, grounding the body after the drifting uncertainty of the night. And as the day begins, the night is not forgotten. It lingers in posture, in mood, in decision-making. A king delays a decree. A farmer chooses a different field. A monk repeats a prayer longer than usual. All because of something felt, not proven, during the night. This is how medieval people lived inside time, not racing through it. Night taught patience. Fragmented sleep taught adaptability. Dreams taught caution. And this rhythm repeated endlessly. Night into dawn. Dawn into labor. Labor into dusk. Dusk into night again. No reset. No escape. Just continuity. And that continuity is what allowed people to survive centuries of uncertainty, danger, and change. Then we keep going, letting the rhythm carry itself forward, the way it always did, no sharp edges, no sudden clarity, just continuity. Morning has arrived now, but it doesn't announce itself loudly. It seeps in, light touches the edges of rooms before it touches faces. Shadows shrink slowly, reluctantly. The last remnants of night cling to corners, to beams, to memory. People move differently in these early hours. Carefully. Economically. Every motion counts. A farmer steps outside and pauses, not to admire the sunrise, but to feel the air. Temperature, wind, moisture. The body reads these signs faster than the mind ever could. A noble sits upright in bed, eyes open, not yet fully engaged with the day. A servant brings water. Hands are washed. Sleep leaves the body in stages. In monasteries, silence gives way to routine. The day's structure asserts itself. The night's looseness is replaced by order. But something from the night always comes along. A heaviness behind the eyes. A lingering image. A calm resolve that didn't exist yesterday. No one names these things, but everyone feels them. This is how medieval life moved forward, not reset, not refreshed, just continued. Work begins early because daylight is precious. But even as hands move and voices rise, the body still remembers the night. Fatigue is not a failure here. It is expected, built into the system. People lean into repetition. Repetition saves energy. Repetition creates stability. And as the sun climbs, the night finally withdraws, not defeated, just postponed. Because everyone knows it will return. Tonight. Tomorrow. Always. And when it does, the body will remember exactly how to meet it again, with partial rest, shared space, quiet endurance, and trust in rhythm. That is the medieval way of living inside time. Then we let the day unfold slowly, carrying the weight of the night without ever stopping to acknowledge it. The sun is higher now, but it does not erase fatigue. It only reveals it. Bodies move with practiced efficiency. Not rushed. Not careless. Every task follows memory more than thought. Hands know what to do even when the mind drifts. In the fields, tools bite into soil that still holds the night's coolness, breath fogs briefly, then fades. Muscles warm gradually, loosening from stiffness earned in broken sleep. No one complains about being tired. Tiredness is assumed. It is the background state of existence. In towns, doors open one by one. Wood groans. Stalls are arranged. Goods laid out with quiet familiarity. Voices are low at first. Conversation grows only after movement has already begun. In royal halls, the ruler finally appears, not refreshed, but composed. Clothes hide fatigue. Posture conceals the night. Decisions made today will still carry echoes of dreams and half-remembered thoughts. A hesitation here. A firmness there. No one asks why. In monasteries, the discipline of the day takes over. Sleep deprivation is not discussed. It is sanctified. Endurance becomes virtue. And yet, despite the labor, despite the fatigue, the day has a gentler pace than modern life. No screens. No constant alerts. No artificial urgency. When the body tires again, it does not fight it adapts. Short pauses happen naturally. Leaning against a wall. Sitting briefly on a bench. Closing the eyes for a moment without shame. This is how fragmented nights are balanced, by forgiving days. As afternoon approaches, the memory of the night softens. Not forgotten, just absorbed. Dream images lose their sharpness. But their influence remains, subtle, quiet, guiding. And as the sun begins its slow descent, something familiar returns. Anticipation. Not excitement. Recognition. The body knows what is coming. Another evening. Another night. Another cycle of partial rest and quiet endurance. No dread. No resistance. Just rhythm, and as shadows lengthen and work slows, people begin preparing, not consciously, but instinctively, for the night they will soon enter again. And so the light begins to tilt, not suddenly, not dramatically, but with the same patience that governs everything else. Shadows stretch before anyone notices them. The air cools by degrees so small they're felt more than measured. Work slows, not because a signal is given, but because bodies sense the limit. Tools are set down carefully. Not abandoned. Placed where they will be found again, animals are gathered, doors are closed partway. Fires are encouraged, not yet fed. This hour belongs to transition. In homes, movement becomes quieter. Voices soften. Tasks shift from effort to maintenance. Food is prepared with what remains. Nothing elaborate. Nothing wasted. Eating at this time is grounding. It marks the body's return from labor to enclosure. Stories emerge now, not performances, just fragments. Something remembered. Something overheard. Something dreamed the night before. No one demands attention. Listening is loose, optional. Children grow heavy-eyed first. Their bodies surrender easily. They lean, sit, curl. Adults resist a little longer, not out of strength, but responsibility. Someone must tend the fire. Someone must secure the door. Someone must remain awake just a while longer. Outside, the world quiets unevenly. Birdsong fades in patches. Insects take over without announcement. The sky deepens. This is not sleep yet. This is preparing to sleep. Clothes loosen. Shoes come off. Bodies arrange themselves where rest will eventually happen. There is no anxiety about falling asleep quickly. No expectation of staying asleep. Night is not a challenge to be conquered. It is an environment to inhabit. People settle in knowing they will wake again. And again. And perhaps again. That is normal. The fire dims. The room breathes. Darkness fills space without urgency, and once more, the long medieval night opens its arms, not to promise rest, but to offer continuation. Breathing slows. Thoughts loosen. The cycle turns without interruption. Then the night settles fully, not like a curtain dropping, but like water finding its level. Darkness is complete now. Not absolute, never absolute, but thick enough that shapes soften and edges disappear. The fire is low. Not gone. Just enough to remind everyone where the room ends, breathing becomes the loudest sound. One person turns, another sighs. Someone wakes without knowing why. This waking is familiar. It doesn't surprise anyone. Eyes open in the dark. The ceiling is invisible. Time has no shape. Thoughts drift in slowly, without urgency. Memories surface, unfinished tasks, half-heard conversations, a face from long ago. They come and go without resistance. Some people whisper a prayer. Others simply lie still. In this hour, the body rests even when the mind wanders. Muscles soften. The heart slows. Sleep arrives in fragments. Short, deep pools of unconsciousness. Then release. A person wakes again. Shifts position. Pulls fabric closer. Outside, the night is alive in quiet ways. Wind moves through leaves. Something small scurries. Far away, a sound that means nothing and everything at once. No one reaches for light unless necessary, darkness is cheaper than flame. In monasteries, this is a sacred hour. Silence is absolute. Stillness is discipline. In homes, it is practical. Wakefulness costs nothing. Some people use this time. They think. They plan. They pray. They simply exist without being observed. This is where medieval nights were longest, not in hours, but in experience. Eventually, without ceremony, sleep returns. Not deep. Not perfect. Enough. Dreams slip in quietly. Not stories, sensations. Movement. Wait. Emotion without explanation. Then, slowly, the cycle turns again, a faint shift in the air. The suggestion of change. No one notices yet. The night continues to hold them. And it will, for a long time. So we remain inside the night, letting it breathe on its own, without hurry, without destination. Time loosens here. Minutes are not counted. Hours are felt only as changes in the body. Someone wakes again, not fully, just enough to register being alive. A hand moves. A shoulder adjusts, sleep slips away, then waits nearby. This waking is not lonely. Even in silence, there is company. Others are breathing. Others are dreaming. Others are awake too, somewhere in the dark, the room holds all of it at once. Thoughts wander gently now, slower than before. They don't chase each other. They drift like smoke. A memory of warmth. A sound from childhood. A feeling that has no words. Nothing demands resolution. Outside, the night shifts slightly. The cold deepens, then steadies. Clouds move unseen. Stars rearrange themselves without comment. The world is still working, just quietly. Sleep returns again, thin but welcome. Not the heavy sleep of collapse. The soft kind that comes and goes. Dreams blur into wakefulness. Wakefulness blurs into rest. At some point, a rooster will call too early. Or a bell will ring. Or light will creep back in. But not yet. For now, this is the long middle of the night, the part most forgotten by history, yet lived through by everyone. No drama. No fear. Just persistence. Bodies resting as best they can. Minds floating without pressure. And this is how medieval life endured, not through perfect rest, but through gentle repetition. Night does not end here. It simply turns. And we stay with it. Then the night keeps its hold a little longer, the way it always does when no one is watching the clock. The darkness thins almost imperceptibly. Not light yet, just a soft easing, as if the night loosens its grip by degrees. A body turns toward where morning will be. Not consciously. Instinctively. Breath deepens. Then slows again. Someone wakes and stays awake this time. Not restless. Simply present. This hour belongs to quiet awareness. The mind is clear in a way it rarely is during the day. Thoughts arrive without weight. Concerns feel distant, manageable, almost theoretical. This is when decisions sometimes form. Not final decisions, just the sense of direction. A farmer resolves to mend a fence. A merchant decides to delay a journey. A monk feels certain about a prayer he will repeat. No lists. No urgency. Just knowing. Sleep returns gently for some. Others remain awake, listening to the house breathe. Wood contracts. Fabric shifts. The last ember pulses faintly. Outside, the world prepares itself again. Dew gathers. Air settles. Animals stir before people do. Still, no one rises yet. Rising too early wastes energy. Resting longer costs nothing. Medieval life understood this deeply. Eventually, the gray returns, not as daylight, but as permission. Permission to wake. Permission to move. Eyes open more fully now. Limbs stretch cautiously. The body checks itself before committing to the day. Another night survived. Another cycle completed. Not triumphantly. Quietly. And as the first true light begins to touch the edges of things once more, the rhythm resets without ever breaking. Night into day. Day into night, always the light finally arrives, but it does so gently, as if it remembers the night it is replacing. Edges return first. The outline of a doorway. The suggestion of a window. The shape of another person nearby. Color comes later. Eyes open fully now. Not all at once. One blink, then another. The body takes inventory. Stiffness is noted. Fatigue acknowledged. Nothing judged. Someone sits up slowly. Another remains lying down, gathering will. Both are right. Morning sounds return in fragments. A distant voice, footsteps outside. The soft clatter of something being set down. No announcement is needed. The day has begun because the body is ready enough. Movement resumes carefully. Clothes are adjusted. Hair is smoothed by hand. Water is taken, not rushed. The memory of the night fades, not erased, just folded away. It will reappear later, quietly influencing mood and motion. Outside, the world looks familiar again. Fields. Streets. Walls. The same as yesterday. And yet slightly altered, because everyone inside it is carrying another night within them. This is how time passes here. Not in sharp divisions. But in layers. Night resting on day. Day pressing gently into night. Nothing wasted. Nothing separate. And as the first true work of the morning begins. As tools are lifted, doors opened, paths walked. The rhythm continues exactly as it always has. Unbroken. Unremarked. Enduring. Then the day begins fully, but not abruptly. It flows from the night like water from a hidden spring, carrying with it traces of dreams, faint echoes of incense, herbs, and half-remembered visions. The world wakes slowly. Not all at once. Not everyone at once. Some rise early, others stretch and linger a little longer in the warmth of the bedding, the familiarity of bodies around them. In the streets and courtyards, movement is deliberate. No one rushes. Tasks resume where they left off the day before, mending fences, tending animals, checking fires, preparing food. Hands know the rhythm before the mind fully catches up. In palaces, the ruler appears at last, calm and measured. Cloth and robes conceal fatigue, but dreams linger beneath composure. Advisors speak softly, reports are read aloud, letters are delivered. Decisions made now carry the weight of the night that preceded them, insights, uncertainties, and intuitive guidance folded quietly into every choice. In monasteries, chanting resumes, the disciplined repetition of prayer, work, and study merges seamlessly with the lingering fragments of night, half-formed visions, soft reflections, and meditative awareness. Sleep, though broken, has taught patience, endurance, and subtle perception. Across all classes, the cycle is clear: wake, work, observe, endure. Day is not a new beginning, it is a continuation, a layer added atop the one before. Even the air, heavy with morning mist or warmed by the sun, carries the memory of the night. Food is taken in practical portions, sustenance rather than indulgence. Meals ground the body, bringing it fully back into waking reality. Children run, animals stir, tools are lifted. The day moves, carrying forward the lessons of darkness, and yet, everyone knows this: night will return. The sun will fall. Shadows will lengthen. Sleep will come again, fragmented or whole, carrying dreams and rituals, hallucinations and reflections, into the next cycle. This is the medieval rhythm of life, continuous and unbroken. Night shapes day. Day preserves night. Time is layered, persistent, and experienced more than measured. Then the rhythm of the day unfolds seamlessly, carrying the echoes of night with it, like faint incense still clinging to a chamber long after the burners have cooled. Movement is measured now, deliberate, almost ceremonial. Every action, lifting a cup, drawing water, tending animals, sharpening a tool, is shaped by habit and the residual awareness of the long night just past. In the countryside, the first faint breeze stirs leaves, brushing the earth with a whisper that no one fully notices, yet everyone responds to in some way. Farmers bend over plowing lines in the soil that already remembers footsteps from yesterday. Children stumble sleepily into chores or errands, yawns punctuating their motions, yet their bodies are trained to endure. In the castle, the monarch's chamber is quietly alive. Advisors arrive with reports, some urgent, some routine. The ruler's mind is calm but alert, influenced by the residual shadows of dreams and the altered focus of night herbs, incense, or opiates. Small pauses punctuate decisions, moments of reflection inherited from the slow, fragmented rest of the previous hours. Courtiers move lightly, aware of the delicate interplay of vigilance and rest that defines this society. They know that attentiveness at this hour can be as important as any official report, because the night lingers in subtle ways, in half-formed intuition, in lingering visions, in the faint unease or confidence that sleep can produce. In monasteries, the cycle of prayer, study, and labor begins in earnest. Chanting is precise now, the mind sharper but still tempered by nocturnal half-rest. The monks walk and kneel in patterns honed over decades, each motion a meditation, each task a continuation of what began under moonlight hours ago. Even the animals participate in this rhythm. Horses shift their weight in stalls. Dogs pad silently across stone floors. Chickens scratch at the earth as if they remember the movements of yesterday, preparing themselves for the sun's full arrival. By midday, the night is distant but never gone. Its influence lingers in thought, posture, decision-making, and movement. It has shaped not just bodies, but perception, the way the world is interpreted, and the way life is navigated. Food is functional, consumed quickly, sometimes while work continues. The day is not a break, it is a bridge, carrying every soul steadily toward evening, where the night will return, and the rhythm begins again. This is the continuous medieval cycle, night informing day, day accommodating night, sleep fragmented yet sufficient, vigilance and rest coexisting seamlessly. Then the afternoon drifts in quietly, heavy with sun and warmth, yet carrying the subtle influence of the night just past. Shadows stretch longer now, brushing against walls and stones with a slow deliberation. Every movement is measured, tempered by the endurance learned from fragmented sleep and long nights. In villages, the day slows naturally. Workers pause briefly to wipe brows or sip from flasks of water. Children run and stumble, still learning the rhythm of labor and rest. Animals shift lazily in stalls, sensing the lowering sun, instinctively adjusting to the passage of hours. In castles, the monarch walks chambers with the same calm deliberation, reviewing letters, hearing reports, or simply observing. Decisions are informed not just by counsel or necessity, but by the subtle awareness lingering from night, intuition shaped by dreams, sense of incense still faint in the air, and the residual clarity or haze from herbs and potions. Courtiers and advisors move carefully around him, attuned to this rhythm. Even a small misstep could disrupt a delicate balance, the balance between presence, attentiveness, and the lingering influence of the night's rest. In monasteries, the monks' routines continue with unwavering discipline. Even as the sun climbs high, the influence of the night persists. Chants are clear, movements precise, yet infused with the quiet insight that comes from fragmented sleep and reflection during the deep night hours. Meals are taken with care, hands moving as automatically as thought. In open fields, farmers pause briefly as the sun warms the earth. They feel the coolness beneath their feet, the grain in the soil, the moisture in the air, every detail remembered from countless days shaped by nights like these. Even exhaustion is measured, anticipated, and managed, not resisted. By late afternoon, the air begins to cool, shadows lengthen further, and the first hints of evening approach. The world gradually transitions, bodies instinctively adjusting to a rhythm that never ends. Night, day, evening, night. Preparations for the return of darkness begin quietly. Fires are stoked, animals are gathered and secured. Tasks are concluded or set aside to be resumed tomorrow. The day, like the night, is layered, continuous, unbroken, a bridge carrying everyone from one cycle into the next. And soon, as dusk settles, the rhythm will loop again. The world will darken. Sleep, fragmented and continuous, will return. Dreams, visions, and introspection will resume their quiet work, shaping thought, movement, and perception for the hours to come. Then the sun dips lower, and the afternoon softly unravels into evening, the way it always has in the rhythm of medieval life. Shadows stretch across walls, floors, and streets, creeping like slow-moving memory, the air cools imperceptibly, sounds become muted, footsteps softer, voices lower, animals quieter. Everything prepares itself for the approaching darkness. In villages, fires are lit again. Smoke rises lazily, carrying the faint scent of herbs, cooking, and the residue of night's dreams. Families gather close to warmth, speaking softly, conserving energy. Children are corralled and soothed, some dozing in laps, some watching the dim glow of embers. In castles, courtiers make their rounds with care. The monarch reviews papers, settles disputes, or simply observes the movement of servants and guests. Decisions are taken deliberately, influenced by intuition shaped by the night's fragmented rest. Advisors move quietly, aware that each gesture and word is part of a delicate evening rhythm. Monks in monasteries chant the final vespers. The repetition, precise and measured, reflects the cyclical rhythm of life, work, prayer, reflection, rest. Fires flicker against stone walls, casting shadows that mimic the passage of time. Outside, the world slows further. Animals settle into nests, stalls, or burrows. The wind softens. Trees sway with barely audible rustle. The sky darkens gradually, deepening to indigo, then black. People begin to prepare for sleep, clothes are loosened. Beds are arranged. Fires burn low but steady, enough to comfort without disturbing the night. This is the long medieval pre-sleep hour. A quiet, measured pause where the mind drifts between wakefulness and rest. Dreams begin to stir again. Eyes close, open, close again. The body and the mind both enter the threshold of night. The rhythm is familiar. No one resists. No one hurries. And soon, darkness will fully claim the world again, sleep will return in fragments, interrupted yet sufficient. Dreams, visions, insights, and reflections will unfold once more. This is how medieval life persisted, layered, continuous, unbroken. Night shaping day, day carrying the night forward, and the cycle never ending. Then night arrives once more, quietly, without announcement, folding the world into darkness the way it always has. Shadows deepen, swallowing edges of rooms, streets, and fields alike. The air cools, carrying a faint dampness from earth and stone. Animals settle into stillness. Fires burn low, flickering, casting gentle warmth but not enough to banish the dark. People move slowly now, instinctively. Hands adjust bedding, clothes, and fires. Footsteps are muted. No one rushes. No one demands attention. Some are already asleep, drifting in short, fragmented waves. Others are awake, aware only enough to exist without danger or discomfort. Sleep and wakefulness coexist, overlapping, like threads woven tightly yet loosely at once. The memory of the previous day lingers in the body. Tasks undone, worries half resolved, insights half formed, they rest, waiting for tomorrow, but influencing now. Dreams stir as well, fragments, shadows of thought, flashes of images and feelings, some vivid, some fleeting. In palaces, rulers sit quietly in the half-light, sometimes reading, sometimes thinking, sometimes staring into the fire. Advisors move silently, aware of the fragile rhythm of mind and body at this hour. Every movement is deliberate, conscious of both rest and observation. In monasteries, the final watches are maintained. Chanting is minimal or absent. Silence is almost complete. Sleep returns in cycles, deep and shallow, overlapping among those who are awake and those who are resting. Outside, the world breathes slowly. A distant dog barks once. Leaves shift in the breeze. A star appears faintly. Time has no urgency here, only flow. Bodies shift, stretch, sigh. The mind floats. Breath rises and falls, the night's influence pervades every movement, every thought. This is medieval life in continuous rhythm. Sleep fragmented but sufficient. Night shaping day, day carrying the residue of night. And the cycle repeating endlessly. And now, as the night deepens further, you can feel the rhythm, the body, the mind, the world all moving together in slow, deliberate continuity, ready to repeat again and again.